Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Seaweed Brain, a Percy Jackson podcast, live from the Duat. Today, we are going to be talking about chapters 22 and 23 of The Red Pyramid. We are going to Memphis. We are shoving people into lockers. This is, I think, going to be a good episode for rehashing a lot of high school trauma. So stick around.
Yay, rehashing high school trauma, as if that isn't what we do every week on Seaweed Brain Podcast. To help us rehash this trauma, we have a returning special guest joining us today. It is... Wait, how should we introduce you?
This is very exciting. I like to introduce myself these days as the artist formerly known as J. Maya.
Yes.
Now going by Janani K. Woo!
Woo-hoo. I think I'm going to make you talk about that later because we have some discussion of the power of names in these chapters. How thematic. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing? And how do you feel about the Kane Chronicles?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, when I found out that Seaweed Brain was reading the Kane Chronicles, it really did feel like my Avengers. Like all of the things that I enjoy in one combined experience. And so I love the Kane Chronicles. Dare I say, when I was younger, you know, Percy Jackson will always have this like important place in my head and in my heart. But the Kane Chronicles really were so magical for me. And so it's such a pleasure and honor to be here. And I'm doing great for that reason because I got to read the Kane Chronicles last night and now I get to talk about it.
Oh, when was the last time you read them? Was it like as they were coming out?
You know what's so funny? I literally did a big reread of the entire Kane Chronicles and Magnus Chase series last year. So this is fresh in mind, quite topical. And I was very honored when you asked me to do this because it's very fresh.
The other important question we've been asking people, just to get a sense of like where you're at and how you're interacting, you know, with the material is, do you have siblings?
Yes, I do. And in fact, I think that was such a big reason. Okay, I'm going to be so gushy for a second, but I forced my sister to read the Kane Chronicles with me when I was younger. And I feel like that was why I felt such a connection to this series specifically. I have a younger sister. She's 2 years younger than me. And as anyone out there who might have a sibling who's very close in age, you know that your relationship when you're younger kind of goes through like stages of like ebbs and flows. Because like you go to school together sometimes, like it's a lot. You're spending a lot of time together. And I remember when I started reading this book series, Carter and Sadie's relationship was really special to me and important to me. And I really wanted my sister to experience it with me. So we read these together, which is why I think I love them and they've imprinted so much on me.
You're an oldest sister?
I am. And funnily, so many people tell me that I give eldest sister vibes, which is so nice.
I didn't really have to ask. I think I interpreted that immediately upon meeting you the very first time.
I'm honored, truthfully. What about you? Are you guys siblings?
Let's do we should do a recap. We're several episodes into the Kane Chronicles. Also, my name is Erica, and I am the youngest of three girls. Gurlz. Carter?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Carter. I'm the other co-host. I am the older sibling. There's two of us. I have a younger sister who's 3.5 years younger and who has guested on this podcast exactly once and is really afraid to ever come back. But I keep mentioning to her that we're doing the Kane Chronicles, which is a book series that she has a lot of opinions about. But we'll see.
Yeah, people will remember Nikki famously from being the first person to come on the podcast and answer the question, like, do you think we should destroy Western civilization? With the answer, no.
Yeah, at the time it was very controversial, but she took a big swing. I think this was for the Sea of Monsters or something. Yeah, this would have been very early days Seaweed Brain when we were in the same house in 2020.
She shocked the world by being the youngest guest at that point and also the most moderate. But good for her.
It was pre-college for her, you know, God bless.
We only have so much time today, so before we dive into the chapters, we're talking about 22 and 23. We're going to thank our patrons. As always, our sustaining patrons, Dayton, Justin, James, Izzy, and Olympus Weekly. We freaking love you guys. And everybody should join our Patreon for monthly exclusive special episodes and access to our episode outlines and our super special fun Discord server. This month, we're talking about the Song of the Summer for our monthly episode. Are we? I thought we were doing that.
We should. I think that's correct. Yeah.
Although people have been asking us to return to Phineas and Ferb, so we may do that as well. Okay.
Wow, summer vacation's about to end. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I just put on a fresh episode of Phineas and Ferb last night because I was doing an exchange with someone where I sat down for an episode of Total Drama Island, and then they sat down for an episode of Phineas and Ferb. It was a cultural exchange, you know. And I specifically selected the Meep episode where Meep is introduced for the first time in Phineas and Ferb.
Meep. Meepless in Seattle.
No, Meepless in Seattle is Meep number 2. This was Meep number 1, where Candace tries to take Meep to the Japanese toy doll convention because the toy doll that she custom designed was really ugly. It was a cow frog.
That's a great also comparison piece for Kane Chronicles because of the sibling relationship.
Siblings.
Yes. Where did we last leave off in chapter 21? At the airport.
At the airport, as Charlie describes in the song Apple. The airport of Apple fame, if you will.
She did.
She invented airports.
She did!
She's TSA, actually.
That's so funny because when you say Charlie Airport, I don't think Apple. I think Beg For You featuring Rina Sawayama. You know,
That's
I go
true.
insane every time you have to catch a flight.
Erica being one of the few people brave enough to reference the crash era on the internet.
Take me to the airport. Let's make out under the bathroom lights.
It's true. It's true.
This is like the only podcast where you can get Kane Chronicles, Percy Jackson, Phineas and Ferb, and Charlie XCX discourse in like the same 3-minute window. I just needed to say that before we continue because are you guys seeing this? There's nothing like this on the internet. Please. I'm so sorry.
It hasn't even been 10 minutes yet.
We were at the airport. We were specifically at Reagan, not Dulles, trying to get out of DC and make our way to Memphis because we have special first-class tickets from Nut, the Sky Goddess, to go see Thoth. But
I think it's Thoth.
is it Thoth?
I'm back on my audiobook grind.
They say Thoth. That's so interesting. As we'll learn coming up, fundamentally, they're all colonizer names because these are all the Greek name of this deity, and we should maybe be using the original Egyptian name. But I'll go with Thoth. We're going to go see Thoth in Memphis, but at this point, we still have to get through security, which is what we're doing now. We're making our way through security. You might remember Bast is doing her wealthy woman socialite. I'm flying first class at the airport, and maybe it's the 1950s type of drag. She's wearing a coat. She's flirting with every member of the TSA so they don't notice that we're carrying Sadie, who is still a bird of prey on Carter's arm. Just through the metal detector. It's all going very well for us, but this whole time, we forgot this part in the recap, but we have been escaping from the set animal, the set creature.
The set animal.
Which is back. We just got through security. It's on the other side of security. It's attacking random people who think it's a moose because there is some sort of mist adjacent, mortals will believe anything, the power of suggestion is very strong type of confusion, mysticism going on.
It hasn't been named the mist, but it functions in the same way.
Yeah, people will see something close to what Carter and Sadie see. You have to think really hard to see certain things. Carter's about to activate the avatar body in a body thing, and people refer to him as the Chicken Man, which means that they can see something, but we're not exactly sure what it is they're looking at.
And it's not just isn't it like a 12-year-old child or something who's like, oh my God, Chicken Man. It's
giving,
so important.
Elf or something, like the power of children to see through to the true core of the magic that's happening.
And these are two very difficult chapters that we have today for young Mr. Carter Kane. He is going through a lot of insecurities being put on display. You know, poor thing, he just really leveled up here. He's doing his magic thing. He's communicating with Horus and he's pulling out his avatars. He's plucking his sword from the duat and doing all this impressive stuff. But then somebody's like, Chicken Man. And he's like, I'm going to jump out a window.
He internalized that. Yeah.
I feel so bad for him. So bad for him.
Oh, absolutely.
This is high school trauma, right? This is what we're talking about, Carter?
Oh, many things. I was mostly talking about the basketball stuff that's about to come up, but
that's also bad.
It's that, and the theme of this chapter is the locker. He just learned in the previous chapter, that was his big power up, to learn how to store things in the duat using this mental imagery trick of imagining that it's a locker with a certain combination that has to do with the Lakers retired jersey numbers. But he does several versions of the trick where he, as Erica mentions, recovers the khopesh. He reaches through the duat to get it from Egypt. And then now, the way that he wins this fight, because he is unable to use his avatar, his sword, any of these techniques to subdue the set animal, who he names Leroy. He just shoves it up into the locker at some point when it seems like things are not going his way. He's been bitten. He's bleeding out on the floor of the airport. But he shoves the monster to a locker.
I find this to be very satisfying because of the fact that we have had like next to zero magical training, and this is like one of the only things he knows how to do, and also just learned how to do roughly 3 minutes ago from Bass, like in the airport lobby. He's like, okay, I'll just do that because that's the only thing.
Exactly. It's inventiveness. It's resourcefulness. That's important. He's thinking outside the box, shoving people into boxes.
My favorite thing about this chapter is as soon as he like forms the chicken head avatar, the voice of Horus inside of him says, "Well done. We will die with honor now." Like,
this is such a silly observation. I just love that the set animal is a moose, because I did go and look at a picture of the set animal, and I don't know if moose comes to mind for me when I look at that, more like cat or dog with long ears. But I really respect Rick Riordan for just sending it and thinking that people would think that it's a moose. And this image of like a moose loose in TSA has like really stuck with me from when I first read this book. But I also like, one of my favorite parts of this chapter is Bast just in general. Like, Carter is so confused that Bast shows up with a first class ticket for a Falcon, and he's like what? And he's just like generally so confused about the whole thing, which is so valid. And I remember when I read the King Chronicles for the first time, and I was like, if I could just have a Bast in my life that shows up in like difficult situations and just has the exact right thing, like my life would be so much better.
Exactly. She's so wonderful because she does always know what to do, but she's not perfect, you know? That's why she seems so real to us, because she always has the answers, but she's also clearly like a little bit of a mess in her own way. In like a way that we can't comprehend because we're not old enough to understand her mess yet, but she has a mess going on somewhere, you know? She has her own battles she's fighting. And when we get to the plane, Carter like sits down right next to Bast, and Sadie has a Falcon still. Bast is like, wait a second, that was really brave. And also everything that you did with like summoning the sword and then like putting the set animal into the locker, that's really impressive stuff. She literally says, impressive. That's how the audiobook narrator said it, and it sounded like Jesse James. I think there's something also fun going on in these two chapters in particular, which is tracking who gets Bast's verbal praise and approval when, and how does the other person feel about it. Because now we've spent so much time together that this sibling relationship is forming, in the sense that like, which one of us is pleasing our parental guardian, and how does the other person feel about it. And they're kind of getting a little bit, well, maybe Sadie a little bit less so because she has a little bit more confidence than Carter, but Carter is about to get butthurt in the next chapter when after he gets praised by Bast here, Sadie gets praised by Bast next, and he's like, what? Like, I thought I was special.
It's very accurate to sibling rivalries. That's what I respect about it. And also, like, you're pointing out this really interesting dichotomy, I think, where like Bast is the maternal figure for these two people, and you know, parental figures are supposed to, they love their children unconditionally, but then also we're getting Bast realizing in real time that these are two very powerful magicians. So these like two things. And there's this line in this chapter that I really loved, describing Bast and Carter in the airplane. And Bast is like studying Carter as if seeing him for the first time. And it emphasizes this point that you said, you know, they've trained so little. They really are, you know, flying by the seat of their pants, and nobody knows what to expect of them. Horus, Isis, Bast, nobody knows what to make of these two young magicians, but they're proving themselves anyway. And I just think that was really well represented in this scene too.
Yeah,
absolutely. Now we go and we have a Lou Kronos style Carter dropping into the Set dream.
Yes, there's a dream sequence. We're going to see Set in Arizona, which Carter, I would say, quite shadily describes as a vast grid of beige and green squares. I believe that is accurate, but
Sadie wouldn't know.
She wouldn't. Yeah, maybe that's why she's not able to dream connect, because she doesn't dream of Arizona. That's not something that would be
Carter
legible
dreams
to her,
of Arizona.
So Carter is like flying over Phoenix. We get to Camelback Mountain, which it's a little unclear. Like, does he like pull that name out of like the magic of the dream? Does he know about this mountain?
No, he definitely knows about the highest mountains throughout the country. He had a book. He had an atlas, where he memorized like the topography of the continental United States.
Yeah.
He knows that that's Camelback Mountain. Trust me, he just knows.
I believe it. Yeah, we're flying into Camelback Mountain specifically. There's like a hole or something, and we find out that it has been hollowed out on the inside, and they are building a red pyramid.
That's the titular role.
It's here. An important context that we got from Bast a few chapters ago in Paris, of course, is that red is the color of evil. It is the color of soil that will not grow plants. This is an evil pyramid that we're building in here.
Evil. It's not just evil. It's every villain is lemons.
So we're flying here. We meet Set, who physically looks different. He is described as being kind of a linebacker with, huge physical appearance. He's wearing all red. He has a goatee now and short hair.
Absolutely not.
It's a little gross. I don't love it, but I think part of what this is doing for us is we're still trying to figure out who Set's host is and how Set is relating to that host, how much he is like taken over that person as opposed to them potentially sharing power in some way, in the same way that we're thinking about, Sadie and Isis, Horace and Carter. So the physical change is relevant to us trying to piece those puzzles together, perhaps. And we get evil machinations here in this conversation.
Yeah, because it's not just Set who we're seeing. We're also seeing some demons.
Specifically one demon. It's like a conversation between Set and our new friend, Face of Horror.
I love Face of Horror. Face of Horror is doing like one of my favorite characters to pull out in an improv set, which is Master! Oh no, Master! Surely, Master! We haven't finished by your birthday, Master! So good. Absolutely.
Sniveling hench person. Yeah.
Yes. Groveling on the ground, like kissing your feet hench person.
Evil Mort.
Yes.
And his name is Face of Horror. And Carter, this is actually, I was laughing out loud on the streets of the Bay Area listening to this. And Carter being like, why is his name Face of Horror? How many names did his mother cycle through before she landed on Face of Horror? And then he refers to him as Face for short.
People refer to like Babyface, the iconic producer from the 90s, as Face as a nickname. It's the same. I think that's probably where Rick would have pulled this from, the idea that a Face of Horror could be nicknamed Face.
Also, is this an Egyptian mythology deep cut? I'm assuming it is.
I don't know, actually. Face of Horror is described as being 7 feet tall, skinny, and having no skin on his face. Just fangs and dark eyeballs.
Too much retinol. The percentage was too high. He didn't gradually increase the percentage of his retinols.
Carter
makes his face off.
He references the bodies experiment. Is this something that we all have a context for? The like traveling science exhibition that was taking maybe people who were labor camp prisoners in China, their like dead bodies around America, and having different.
This was a big thing in the 2010s.
Of, like, the skin pulled off, and you could see like their eyes or their muscles or their veins or their bone, like all these different like aspects of the physical body with real bodies. Anyway, that's what Carter's point of reference is for Face of Horror.
I remember this being like a weird topic in the 2010s when it was traveling around.
It came to Ala Moana. It was on the first floor by the Nordstrom.
Yes.
Can I make a very silly observation about Face of Horror that it's just so ridiculous? Do you think if Face of Horror signed up for like a college class, the registration form would say of horror, comma, face?
Right. Or horror, comma, face of.
Oh, is of a middle name? Is it a double last name? These are the questions that we demand answers to, I think, personally.
I kind of think it's of horror, comma, face, as in like Legolas of the Woodland Realm,
It's just horror. It's just that's the place. I think that's what I choose to believe now.
I had that exact thought though. Like, why does Carter call him face and not of?
Face up. Exactly. I don't know.
I think it would be like, isn't it analogous to like having a last name like Dela Cruz or like Al-Aqsa or something, like where it's like the of would be part of it, but maybe when you alphabetize, you wouldn't count the of in the alphabetization and it wouldn't be capitalized.
I choose to believe that now, actually. My opinion has been swayed. I think it's one last name.
I do think that the alphabetization thing, though, is still up in the air because I think at Book Culture, we would alphabetize De La Cruz under D,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's under H. Yeah.
Anyway.
It should have been the Of Horror Chronicles. I'm so sorry. Please
No, we
continue.
love. I need to know. That's why I said, is there like some fun Egyptian backstory that we can know about this guy? Because I need to know more about Face of Horror, Master. Please, oh, I need to find out. I love a sidekick. I love an evil sidekick. It also reminded me, because of the whole Face of Horror thing, it reminded me a lot of the two henchmen of Hades in the animated Hercules.
Phobos and Deimos
Yes.
in the animation. Yeah.
I wasn't picturing like somebody whose face was horrifying. I was picturing somebody who was like permanently stuck in like a face of horror, you know, like an expression of horror.
I see.
Anyway, I want to know more about him.
I do. This is maybe a spoiler. I think we're gonna. I don't think this is the last we see of Face of Horror. We'll get to know them a little bit more, but we're here to overhear a conversation between Face of Horror and Set, where we're first of all syncing up on the original plan, which is that Osiris is entombed within the Red Pyramid. Carter's like, yeah, that makes sense. I can feel his energy. That's why this was unsettling yet familiar when I was in this cavernous space under the mountain. That the plan originally is to sacrifice Osiris to create the final and eternal tomb of Osiris and basically use that sacrifice to generate a whole bunch of power for Set to create a huge storm, destroy a bunch of the continent, gain power, etc. But that's just the original plan. Face of Horror, this is a little bit surprising. He seems like a common demon, but he is counter-proposing. He says, dream bigger. He says, we got to get the other 3 siblings, including the wife who shall not be named, Nephthys, who is somebody we keep forgetting about. But Face says we should get Nephthys, we should get Horus, we should get Isis, and sacrifice them all as well as Osiris, and do an ultra mega storm, order of magnitude larger, destroy the whole continent, make you unquestionable. And Set goes, yeah, okay, we'll do that. And we also have a timeline now that the deadline for all this is the morning of Set's birthday.
Yeah, Face of Horror is clearly no common demon. Face of Horror is giving me a little bit of Manny Jacinto and the Acolyte vibes, where he is pretending to be less powerful than he actually is, so that he can sneak his plan into Set's mind. Because we just had a whole chapter talking about how Set isn't truly bad, He isn't he isn't all evil, he isn't pure evil. So who is giving him all of these ideas? There has to be someone.
We have questions about Face of Horror. We have questions about how much destruction exactly this plan is going to cause, but the dream ends with Set turning around, reaching out to grab Carter, and we're violently awakened. It's time for an ad break.
All right, chapter 23, Sadie's perspective. The title is Professor Thoth's final exam. Carter wakes up from the dream and Sadie says, sleep well. And again, I know it's sassy, but I'm obsessed with Sadie being constantly concerned about Carter's sleep. It's something I'm enjoying tracking.
Yeah, it's a good thread.
Sadie is human again, right? So she's no longer a bird. Human again. That's from the Beauty and the Beast stage adaptation. She changed back like an hour ago. And she's thinking about, all of the things that Carter said to her. And she's like, he said some really embarrassing stuff, but I'm going to choose not to make fun of him for it. Because she's clearly really touched by how hard he was trying to turn her back. But of course, she's like, all he was doing was telling me stories about Dad. And like we noted last time, she doesn't have a relationship with her dad. Like, that's not going to work for her. So she did not think about their father. She instead thought about their mother, going shopping with her, and the days when things were happy. And I immediately thought of one of the scenes from the opening of The Parent Trap, where the British one is shopping with their mother, who looks like Princess Diana. And that sense of like peace and safety. I feel like I'm able to grasp onto that sensation of like, oh, I'm at the mall with my mom. Everything is right in the world. And then she has this really, oh God, this is this yet another step in the I feel so bad for Carter in these chapters journey, which is where she's like reflecting on how hard it must have been for the first time for Carter to be alone with their dad. And she admits that like, as much as she wants a relationship with her father, he's like not an easy person to please. He's not an easy person to impress. She even talks about how she had to like mentally ready herself to see him on those like visitation days that she would get, because he is like intimidating, and thinking about how Carter is just constantly worried about being on his best behavior and trying to get their dad's approval. Maybe he didn't have it better after all.
Yeah, I think I was so struck by that passage too, honestly, because it really goes to something that I love about the King Chronicles is how it doesn't sugarcoat how complex parental relationships are, sibling relationships,
Mhm.
sibling rivalry. I mean, this question of like Sadie being jealous of Carter's life, Carter potentially being jealous of Sadie's life, and then them realizing that the other person is not just like the sibling that exists and they're like an actual person. And, Sadie realizing that her dad is a person who can make mistakes. Like these
Mhm.
are, realizations that kids come to as they grow up. And they're painful realizations because it's easier to believe that your parent figure is steady and can do no wrong and
Mhm.
can lead you through life. But it's a harder realization to realize sometimes, like, your parents are humans fighting and trying to get through life just as much as you are. And I really, really love that. And then also this idea that like parental figures don't have to just be your birth parents all the time too. They can be people in your life like Bast who give you
Yeah.
that unconditional love and support. So I
Yeah.
love that part of this chapter. Also, just in general, Sadie is maybe the funniest person in the world in the Riordan verse to me. She's so funny. It's insane. I literally laugh out loud every time I read every passage. So it was great.
I think Sadie battles with Meg for me. I think Meg in Draza Apollo is so cutting and hilarious and dry. I love her as well, but they would be friends.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Also, it's so great this section and this Sadie really thinking about their dad because you see Carter and Sadie going from being like oppositional into being a team where like previously Carter was like the obstacle between Sadie getting to her father, and now Carter and Sadie are like a team thinking about their father being,
Mhm.
maybe a little bit emotionally toxic. This is why Carter
Yeah.
has an anxious attachment style, by the way,
Because of the dad. Yeah, it's true. It's
because
true.
his caregiver was constantly giving and taking away approval and love and making him like jump through hoops for his love.
But okay, that's all sort of background. Carter, after he wakes up, has to share this dream, and we have to sync up about what we're going to do now that we have more details about Seth's plan. I thought it was really interesting that Bat's first reaction here is basically like, "That's weird. That's out of character for him," which is something that we were noting earlier. That this is something we've been winding up to. Not probably would have said something similar. That Seth doesn't want to destroy everything. He wants to be in charge. He wants power. He wants respect, and that doesn't really make sense with the plan of destroying all of his siblings and destroying all of these people who he could potentially rule over. We're gonna put a pin in that. And Bast also is like, "Who's this face? Say more about face over
Horror,
there."
comma, face
That's
of.
horror. Yeah, of horror, comma face. That was a little suspicious. We'll have to see about that. I see some common demon. I don't think so. But
Mm-mm.
I think undergirding all of this is a dynamic that I really enjoy, which is where Bass is also going to talk about Thoth a little bit. I love the idea of her having history with all of these deities that we only get to glimpse into. That we are like
Yes.
through Carter and Sadie, we are kind of like spying on, like a soap opera in a way that we kind of. There's something similar that we saw with the Greek and Roman pantheon, but the Greco-Roman pantheon is a little more familial, and there's a little more of a sense that they're all on a team together. Like the Greco-Roman pantheon is a group of people who won a war together to establish themselves as in charge of something together as a family unit. The Egyptian gods are a little bit more like loosey goosey, like everyone is kind of doing their own thing. Like Bast and Thoth, I don't think have any formal like relationship in that sense. They just have encounters that they've had in different bodies with different human hosts or animal hosts over the course of 5,000 years. And so for Bast to be like, "Oh yeah, we have kind of beef, but I'm not going to say more," that's fascinating. I want to win into that. When Bast is like, "That's not kind of what Seth's deal is." I mean, like, I guess we could also observe that based on what we've heard and what we know so far, but I'm really interested in her being like, "I've been around the block with him. I know his business, his tea." From what? Is that just hearsay? Is this just something that everybody knows? Or are you like, there are certain questions that I think will remain unanswered, but that are delicious, juicy.
Yeah. But the gigantic brown river below means it's time to land in Memphis. So we touch down in Memphis. Sadie is like
There's a lot of
experiencing
middle America shade in this book.
Sadie is experiencing the South of America for the first time. There's some interesting observations. She's like, "Oh, it's like Gone with the Wind." That shouldn't be a good thing, but Sadie didn't have American history, so
Yeah, these descriptions are fascinating because it A seems like she doesn't know that much of America, but then B is also like really like she's really keying in on basically the like residual segregation that
Mhm.
exists in the city in a way where like that's not the language that she uses per se, but she is like, "Oh, these houses look like they're old, and this is my cultural reference that is very clearly connected to slavery and like giant white people homes, and then we cross a river and now it's different, and there are people of different races here and all of that." And The imprecision of the language is fascinating. I don't know, but it feels not inaccurately observed for Memphis that there are like very visible geographic vestiges of housing discrimination and everything, as it were. But she doesn't have that much language for it. That's true. It
Yeah,
is a
she's also
little
12.
fascinating to see like a British 12-year-old, yeah,
Yeah.
making off the cuff observations about the racial geography of the American South.
Hmm. And then this is the part where Sadie's like, oh, we're going to the University of Memphis. That's where we're going to find Thoth. And Bass is like, very good, Sadie. And Sadie is like, oh, I could tell Carter didn't like that. Carter did not like that one. Because poor Carter and his anxious attachment style really needs to get Bass's approval constantly to feel like he is loved and worthy. Poor thing.
I'm going to need you to
God.
explain the image here, because I think I've seen all of the SNL clips that he did, but I'm not placing this particular reference.
At this point in the outline, I have placed a photo of Marcelo Hernandez on a Weekend Update bit because, okay, it's because we go to the University of Memphis. We are trying to find Thoth. When we get there, there's lots of baboons because baboons are like, their patron is Thoth. And we find Khufu. Khufu is like making baboon noises. Bass can speak baboon. And she's like, oh, he's saying, where have you guys been? And when I hear that, I think of Marcelo Hernandez talking about how he doesn't go to the barbers, he goes to the salon. And when he gets to the salon, all the ladies say, where have you been? And he says, I don't know. That's why I said that.
Okay. We got there. Thank you for that explanation.
I'll put a link in the show notes.
I resized the image, so it's now in the wrong place. So I gotta put it back with Khufu.
Yeah.
Where have you been?
Thank you. Where have you been?
Bass says, if I know Thoth, he'll be at a center of learning, a library perhaps, or a cache of books in Magician's Tomb. Don't have a lot of those in Tennessee, Carter guessed. I now that I reread this, I'm assuming that he was referring to the Magician's Tomb. The first time I was like, is he saying there are no libraries in Tennessee? That's really shady. I think this house is catching a lot of strays in this chapter. But
That's funny. I didn't even realize that.
You know who's catching more strays? Carter.
Carter is catching so
Carter's
many.
catching all the strays. I mean, I don't think they're strays. I think they're intended for Carter.
The baboon thing, he is targeted. They are personally singling him out for victimization, because when Bass is doing the translation for Khufu and Carter and Sadie to catch up, a lot of that is backstory. It's Khufu saying, I returned to the Brooklyn house and nobody was there, so I had to go find Thoth because he's the patron of baboons and I needed somewhere to hang out since no one was home. That all makes sense. And then Khufu's like, by the way, you said that we were going to do some basketballing. So if you want the way to Thoth, we're going to have to do a quick pickup round.
No.
And it goes very poorly. It does not go well for Carter. No. He is shirtless, bony, trampled over by baboons, left sweaty on the ground of the court. Sadie's description is also so funny. This description is so important because Sadie has no idea how basketball works. That is what makes it so good, that she doesn't know what it's supposed to look like, but she just knows it's wrong. And she's so imprecise about what's going wrong. She's just like, he looks bad. He looks silly. He's tripping. She says, like, I think he's not supposed to use both hands to move the ball. Like, when he's trying to hit the ball on the floor, he's using two hands. And it looks kind of funny.
No!
Like, she doesn't know what double dribbling is. She's just shooting from the hip, being like, he looks silly. Oh,
God.
Bad for him.
Oh my God, my whole body hurts. I want to cry. I want to scream and pound the ground. Why, God, would you put Carter in such a situation? It's worse when you realize that basketball is his father's thing. His father wanted him to get into basketball. So what does he do? He memorizes stats. He could tell you the history of any player in the NBA, but he can't play basketball.
Yeah.
And he's just like lying on the ground.
Yeah, lying on the ground, peeling himself off, saying, I know stats. That is... That's vivid. That's real. But also, how would he have gotten good at basketball? He's just been playing random pickup games in like a different country every weekend. It was never in the cards for him. It is his father's fault, but he feels bad and he internalizes it.
Exactly. There's also this really special moment. I think, funnily enough, it's such a funny image, but there's this moment where Sadie immediately it clicks for her when he says it was dad's favorite sport, and there's this tacit agreement between them where she's like, I'm not going to tell him that you were so bad if we ever see him again. And that also felt very accurate to a sibling dynamic too, and it reminded me
Yeah.
of me and my sister, where it's like, you know, you squabble with this person so much, and like, you know, you took my clothes, you know, but like if something happens, and you know, you get your relationship with your parents more than anyone else in the world, and if something happens and you know that the, you know, that person is nervous about a parent's approval, you're like, I got it, you know, this will stay
Yeah.
between us. That felt very accurate.
Closing ranks to defend from the
Yes.
parents. Yeah. Yeah, Khufu is devastated. Khufu also like loses all of his street credibility with the other baboons, but holds up his end of the bargain and takes us to go see Thoth in a broom closet that turns out to be a humongous modern office at the University of Memphis. Very vivid imagery.
I live for this. I live for the absent-minded professor. One of my absolute favorite tropes of all time. And when we talk about Bast and Thoth having history, I was kind of shocked when the description was like, he looked like he was in his 20s. That's too young to be a professor. He looked like he was in his 20s, and he had like raggedy blonde hair, and he was wearing like faded jeans and like a nasty lab coat. I was like, Bast.
No, but that's the precise energy of like a weirdly early career academic. Do you see the vision for Bast? Because I think that's I feel like that's the reading between the lines. I don't believe we ever get confirmation of this in the books, and I don't think that this is an actual part of Egyptian mythology. However, maybe they did 1, 2, 3 things from time to time. You know, it's been a long 5,000 years for the two of them.
He has literally, he walks out of here and Sadie's like, what is coming out of his mouth? Is it blood? Oh no, it's meat sauce. I think Bast would be really into that. You know?
Yeah. I think there is the trope of absent-minded professor, smart, a little not all the way there, but like, you know, is like freak nasty
He's gonna match
on
Bast's
the weekends.
freak.
You know?
He's gonna match her freak.
He is gonna match the freak. He is gonna match the freak. There's also a great line when she's talking to the baboons, and she's like, baboons are very wise animals, and Sadie's like, really? And Bast is like, well, they're no cats. I can imagine them arguing and having banter like that.
Yes. Also that moment when Khufu like picks his nose and then flashes his booty cheeks. I'm like, yes.
You better remind the people of the wisdom. Yeah.
Yes.
That's Thoth. He's there. He's a professor. He has a row of ibises typing up all of his manuscripts. And he kind of gets into it. The rest of this chapter is him being very withholding and saying, I don't know if I want to help you interpret the book that I wrote about how to defeat Set, because the first time it didn't go so well. And I kind of overstepped my bounds. I was a little bit too taking sides when I'm supposed to be a neutral arbiter between order and chaos. That was very interesting. And he gives us a lot of the like, you know, we've gotten a little bit of backstory on the side of Set isn't pure evil. You know, he is one of the children. We are all a member of a family together, all of that. But then now we have the other side of the coin, which is Thoth being like, Isis, you pulled some shade. Isis, Horus, Isis, do you remember when you poisoned Ra, the king of the gods, and then blackmailed him into stealing his secret name? That was really shady. This is all kind of actually your fault because you were sneaky, conniving, ambitious. You were trying to put your husband on the throne, even though he wasn't particularly desiring of it. You forced a man's retirement early. That was really shady. And then also, the thing like Horus, do you remember when you cut off Isis's head for saying that you weren't ready to kill Set yet? That was kind of wild. Don't do that again this time, maybe. It's Thoth basically saying, like, I don't think you're ready. If you are just Horus and Isis, this is not going to work out. And then Sadie and Carter happen to be like, wait, hold on now, because we're not Horus and Isis. We're Carter and Sadie, and we have some things to say. We are not just trying to do the same thing they did last time, because we're not doing like the mom and son version of the hosting relationship. We are doing siblings, and it's going to work out differently. We're ready. And
yes.
Thoth is like, is that so? Is that so? I have a test for you. Lot to unpack there.
No, but that is so, again, I feel like we keep stumbling upon things where I'm like, this is the crux of the series. But this is the crux of the series. Yeah. We're not going to do the same thing again. We're not like the other girls.
I love this like throwaway line where Thoth mentions Hermes mentioned, Greek pantheon mentioned. And I
Yes.
think it just, again, it comes back to how good Rick Riordan is at like combining these pantheons, because real mythology is so messy. And like we see this in Heroes of Olympus, the blurring of the line between the Greek and the Roman pantheons. And now he's like doing the same thing with the Egyptian pantheon. It feels very accurate, very fresh to have that mentioned so concretely. And yeah, I loved that. And also, Thoth was very much giving me Hermes vibes anyway. So it made sense.
Yes. This is a very interesting thread that we pull on a few times that I don't know if it's ever going to be as explicit, because the Hermes Thoth one is one of the stronger linkages. Like there are references to this apparently in like Islamic scripture and stuff. Like it has a lot of implications for different faith traditions. But listeners, you might enjoy looking up Interpretatio Agraica. That might be very badly mispronounced, but there was this phenomenon of when the Greeks were, sailing about, visiting other cultures, trying to use their own mythology as a primary interpretive frame for other people's cultures. Um, it's a little bit unclear to me, having not read this literature that well, how much of this is like a metaphysical thing of them being like, your god is actually my god, like in disguise or by a different name, versus them being like, oh, these gods are really similar. This is going to help me to understand your culture. Versus, like you're confused. You need to, like, if you want to continue to worship Thoth, you need to actually worship Hermes. I think these things are all like intermingling, that the cultural politics, the colonialism, the actually trying to metaphysically understand the world are like, the boundaries are a little bit messy. But a lot of these comparisons are comparisons that are, like, as you're pointing out, like they seem kind of vibes based. Thoth versus Hermes, like it's not that they have the same job, it's that they seem like they like have similar like stories and they have similar roles. So they're kind of like sassy, kind of bystandery, kind of people who are everywhere playing all the sides, as opposed to Thoth being like partnered with, say, like Athena, who's also really smart and is responsible for wisdom. Like there's also a fascinating line that they draw between Dionysus and Osiris, where also you're a little bit like, whoa. My first reaction was like, whoa, what? Like I don't see the vision for that at all. But I think it's about the stories. It's like they're both being kind of like chilled out, not super ambitious guys who have like stories of rebirth. Where like aside, like Dionysus gets like birthed out of Zeus's leg after the lightning strike, and not after the lightning strike, after like his mother like saw Zeus's true form and like burned alive, and then Osiris also is like reborn as king of the underworld after he dies. Where it's like a not their jobs are the same because their jobs are very different, but people are pulling at these threads of like, okay, I can like understand this story as being kind of like this story. Maybe we both heard the same story at some point, like 3,000 years before we're meeting now, and like went different ways with it. Or maybe like this, I think these are they're very fascinating, although perhaps limiting ways to think about religions in other contexts. They're not all divergent branches of a single like origin story that came out of like Mesopotamia 5,000 years ago or something. They're different, but anyway.
Carter,
That's
go
our
to your
sidebar.
meeting, and Janani and I will finish.
Okay.
Everyone say
y'all.
bye,
Bye,
Carter.
everyone.
Have fun at your
you,
meeting.
Carter. Have fun at your meeting.
Okay, it's just us now.
This is the plan all along.
Should we respond to what Carter just said? Anything you want to add?
Honestly, I thought it was such a fascinating. I could have listened to Carter talk about that for like 3 hours.
Right?
Because I'm actually very interested pretty recently in the different representations of gods over time too, because I think people tend to think of, for example, let's take Greek mythology as existing. There's like one canon for Greek mythology, but obviously, as we know, there were so many texts that fleshed out different aspects of the gods over so many, hundreds, if not thousands of years, and they've all blurred into our concept now of like the ancient Greek literary pantheon. But truthfully, Athena had gone through so many different iterations of herself. And then if you really start to like analyze it by geography, different gods were worshipped in different parts of Greece and took on different attributes based on that location. Aphrodite, famously known as goddess of love and beauty, was worshipped as a war goddess in parts of ancient Greece. Aphrodite Aristea, different gods took on different epithets. And so it begs the question, when you're writing an adaptation of mythology, what version or attributes of the gods do you use? What is canon? What is quote unquote real? And I really love it when authors play with this idea that there is no canon, there is no objective, real depiction of the gods, and that they're actually, the lines are quite blurred. And I really respect what Uncle Rick has done in all of his book series to this effect.
Yeah. Absolutely. It would be fun if, like, we're about to get the Wrath of the Triple Goddess, but in any book in the future that Rick might write in Percy's universe, for Aphrodite to remanifest herself as a different version of herself. Because we all know we don't love the version of Aphrodite that's in like the original 5 books. She's probably her most insufferable version. But there are so many different versions of her. She could just kind of come back and she's like, "Oh, you're in Memphis? Well, yeah, this is a different area. So I actually am more like this here," or whatever. That'd be fun.
I would love that. And it also already goes to the established facts about Aphrodite, which is that she appears as different versions of herself dependent on the viewer's version of
Mhm.
beauty. So maybe it extends beyond physical beauty and also like other attributes of beauty, strength as beauty,
Yeah.
personality traits as beauty. I think that that's really a cool idea.
Yeah, definitely. I could see that being the in Riordan verse explanation for her appearing differently at different times. Like the different manifestations of what people find to be beautiful, depending on who she's
Love
appearing to.
that. I
Yeah.
love that. It's my favorite part of the series. My favorite early Percabeth moments when Percy's like, huh, Aphrodite looks like Annabeth. How crazy
Annabeth!
is that? I can't wait to see that in the series.
I know. It's so classic teenage boy. Like, what? I don't get it. Why am I thinking of Annabeth? Weird. Okay.
Moving
Moving
on.
on. I don't know if we mentioned this, but Thoth is also like, y'all need to be careful about Set using magic to turn you two against each other. And that, for me, I don't know if you know this, but I haven't finished the series. I only read The Red Pyramid as a kid, and like, I don't remember anything. So, like, I don't really know what's happening. But when I heard that, I was like, I don't like where this is going. Like, we're about to spend all of this time watching them grow closer and closer, and then they're gonna like have magic used to turn them against one another. I don't want that. It's gonna be heartbreaking, but I do see where this is going. Brilliant.
And 100%. And we all know about Uncle Rick, and maybe this is a spoiler alert if you haven't read Daughter of the Deep, but like he's not afraid to write sibling rivalry, so he's not afraid to go there.
Oh my god, Daughter of the Deep mentioned. Wow. I almost forgot about her. We haven't talked. I read it. I think Carter read it too, but we haven't talked about it.
I love Daughter of the Deep. I remember when they made the announcement that it was going to come out. I was like, there's an Indian heroine of a story based on science fiction 20th, and I was very very happy about it. So it's a very
Yeah,
special book. I want the movie adaptation to happen
I
so
know.
bad.
I know, right? Especially because I felt like that book was like the storyboard for a movie. Like there was almost so much potential with the story and like because of the I don't want to say the confines of the genre, but like I think that there's so much more to be told with that
Mm.
story and so much more like detail to go into that it really deserves a screen adaptation sooner rather than later.
It does. And I felt the exact same way when I read it. I was like, I
Yeah.
feel like this is direct to video in my brain. Like I see the vision
Yes.
for this so clearly.
Oh yeah, maybe we'll talk more about Daughter of the Deep on another date. The other thing I want to shout out about this conversation is Carter and Sadie being like, "You said you care about balance. You said that your
Mm,
job is maintaining the balance between order and chaos. If you care about balance, then you have to help us." And of course, I immediately thought of Avatar: The Last Airbender
mm,
about how drawn I am personally to stories that are about restoring balance as
mhm.
opposed to fighting a big bad. And not that those two things do not overlap into a Venn diagram. They do, because usually in these stories, when it's about restoring balance in children's media, there's usually like one person who is messing up the balance, right? Like in this case, we're thinking it's possibly Set, but maybe it's like Apophis or whatever. But I do think that there's a difference between this story and the Percy Jackson story. This story is so much more focused on balance as a concept, whereas
Mm,
I'm not sure that Percy is necessarily thinking himself in his brain about balance, you know? I don't think that
mm.
that's a word that we are like anchoring ourselves to. Not that it isn't there and it isn't a component of the story, and like Nemesis isn't a component of the story, but the
No.
focus is definitely different on the hero's journey in the Greek sense versus this idea of what's more important is restoring balance for everybody involved.
100% agree. And to borrow your phrase from earlier, like this kind of is the crux of the book, if not the series.
We stumbled upon the crux yet
We
again.
yet again, it's kind of like a horcrux. There's one. There are many of them.
Yes,
They're
in
littered around.
pieces spread throughout the book.
Exactly. It's balance in all the senses. It's obviously balance in the world. So, Set and the gods finding order and balance between that tension. But there's also balance between Carter and Sadie, who have spent their lives apart and are navigating what the new normal is now that the two of them are together. Balance with them and their parents. You know, stumbling across like all of these flaws that their parents have and have had over the course of their lives, and reconciling that with the love that they obviously have unconditionally for their parents. It's just like a lesson that, you know, life is going to be messy. Life is not going to be what you thought it was going to be, but you can find that balance in your life and still love the things that you love while understanding that they're not always 100% good for you. I think that that's like a really beautiful lesson. And I try to read these books and think about the mindset that I read them in when I was younger. And I'm like, oh, these are lessons that, I mean, without being cliche or dramatic, like shaped me into who I am. Like this is why we read these books at all ages in our life, to like try to apply a little bit of it to our own life. So yeah.
And even the structure of the book is, compared to the original 5 Percy books, speaks to the project of how do we balance. Like we're getting these two narratives, we're balancing the two narratives against each other and their perspectives, and we're tracking this relationship and how they balance their relationship with each other, as like these two sides of things. Also, blah blah blah, biracial, blah 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 blah.
Exactly.
There's an interesting note here. Did you write this or did Carter write this? Either way, we should talk about it. That says, sidebar, I think Sadie's chapters have generally been more interesting.
I did not write that, but I could have written that because I believe it.
This is a postmortem note from Carter. Is the fact that Sadie's chapters are more interesting because her perspective, you know, and like her narrative voice is, you know, funny and stuff, probably, but it also is interesting because she is observing Carter, and it's more interesting for us to observe Carter than to like hear Carter's thoughts sometimes, because Carter is a boy who would be like, Annabeth looks like Aphrodite, weird, and not reflect on that.
Weird. No, I'm so with you because Sadie is so observant. And I love how different the perspectives are. I love in books when characters feel so distinct. Like it almost is two different authors writing the different voices. And I feel like that with the Kane Chronicles more than any other book in the Riordan verse. Sadie feels like such a distinct, fresh voice. I mean, and like it even goes more meta than that. Like Isis and Sadie feel like different entities completely. Osiris and Carter feel like totally different entities. I love hearing Sadie's voice because she's so perceptive, she's so observant, and everything that she says I agree with. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm like, oh, I like we're mind melded. Like I get everything that you're thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've been talking about this a little bit in the past couple sets of chapters, that it's so interesting what gets narrated in each person's perspective as far as like actual plot. Like, why did this have to be in Sadie's perspective? Because we needed to hear Sadie interpret Carter's experience. Why did Sadie being trapped as a bird have to be in Carter's perspective? Because we want to see the other one, like witnessing the other person going through the hardest things, because it's about their relationship, and that makes it more interesting.
Oh my god, it is just about their relationship. That is the most important thing of the story. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, likely thing for Percabeth podcast to say, but the most interesting thing about this book is the relationship between the two main characters.
It is. That's such a good way to put it. And you're so right. Like it's so important for us to see the change that they have in their feelings toward each other and their experiences, and they're already becoming so much more natural at comforting each other. I mean, you see Carter in real time grow as a person and like learn how to comfort his sister. It's like literally so ironic that they are different animals and different species. Like they don't know how to communicate to each other, but they find their common ground and their common language. It's like it's such a metaphor. The bigger picture is achieved. And it's just beautiful to see that like unfold in real time, and like their love for each other is confusing, but it really does like glue the book together, and hopefully by the end of it, it just like it becomes something else entirely.
It's so interesting also watching them care for each other in ways that they were cared for or not cared for. Like, I wonder how much of this Carter is doing, you know, for the first time, and how much of this is like how his father cared for him. There's so much to think about in the ways that they were brought up differently, and what like gifts they can give to each other from those experiences, and what things they have to get over. Obviously, poor Carter.
You're so right. And what you were saying about Carter's anxious attachment style, like now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh my God, Sadie makes fun of him all the time, but she loves him. He's not used to that. He's not used to being able to be to err or to
Flawed.
make mistakes or to be odd, which he is.
Yeah.
Carter, come on, like we
Yeah.
love you. Like be him being his authentic self, and Sadie kind of like making fun of him for and ribbing, but then in the same breath saying like I love you, I'm gonna stand by you, I'm gonna support you, you're good at what you do, you're smart. Like it probably is so healing for him to be in that kind of environment. And I never even thought about that, but that's such an interesting point.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I can't wait to continue to watch Carter grow. That's our end of our chapters for today. But Janani, why do you think people should read the King Chronicles?
The King Chronicles, to me, is such a manifestation of like the beauty of bringing together diverse perspectives and experiences. These are two characters who were raised in fundamentally different environments, obviously, who share a similar lineage and similar personality traits by nature of them being family. But it's such a joy to see them interact with each other being such different people and like find love for each other and figure out how to work together as a team and put their relationship first. And I think it's just like a beautiful testament to the world that the Riordan verse has built, where people of such different backgrounds are able to come together in furtherance of a similar goal. And I love that about this book more than honestly a lot of other books. And the fact that it prioritizes the sibling relationship is so special. And I just also love Egyptian mythology. Like, I think it's so interesting, and the themes are so different than things that you'll read in Heroes of Olympus or the Percy Jackson series or Trials of Apollo. It's very fresh. It's a different pantheon, and I just think it's so special. And it's the crux of humanity. It's just loving each other and coming together. Anyway, that was it. I think it's a great series, and everyone should read it. And you should read it with your sibling if you have a sibling.
Yeah, not to be dramatic, but it's the meaning of life.
I do mean to be dramatic, actually. It
Yeah,
is the
literally
meaning of
same.
life.
Well, thank you so much. Please tell the people things that you have to promote and where people can find you and all that good stuff.
I love that so much. Thank you so much, Seaweed Brain. Well, today is a big day because last night at midnight, Epic the Wisdom Saga dropped on all platforms. And for people who might not know, Epic is a musical retelling of the Odyssey, and I get to play Aphrodite in this musical. And the saga came out with my song, and it was so wonderful and magical. And highly recommend everyone check it out alongside the animatics on YouTube that will be posted very shortly. And then for me, Janani K, I have a song coming out on September 6th. And funnily enough, I'm so excited. Finally.
I think this episode will come out like the week after, so it means you can stream it as you are listening to this. Go and listen to the song.
Go and listen to the song, my friends. And also, if you like Epic, and I do need to give a shout out that Erica was in a musical written by Epic's creator. So the cinematic universe is strong here, guys. There are so many through lines.
Yeah,
Many
the Jay
connections.
Rivera Haran cinematic universe.
This is the only cinematic universe that I ever want to be a part of in the future, actually. And also goes to show you that Seaweed Brain is connected. They anybody with a strong affiliation to Greek mythology is a fan of Seaweed Brain podcast. Basically, Jorge and Talia, Jorge is the creator of Epic, Talia plays Cersei in Epic, are the co-stars of the music video for Gladiators. So you can watch that on YouTube. I guess now, which is amazing. There's sword play. There was an actual choreographed sword fight at the end of the video, which I'm super excited about. So you can go and watch us swing swords at each other. And then the last little bit for me is that I have a concept album coming out hopefully later this year.
OMG.
And it's mythological in nature. And I love you guys. And thank you for having me, Seaweed Brain. And I'm so honored to be here always. It's the highlight of my month, year, every time I get to be on this podcast. So thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about your concept album. That's really exciting. You must be really busy. Everybody go stream Gladiators. That's the new song that's dropping on September 6th.
That is the new song
Okay.
that's dropping. And everyone, please go see Wicked on national tour. I'm sure you're more than familiar with how wonderful Erica is in the musical, but I will be going out of my way to see it when it's in Los Angeles, and I can't wait.
Yay.
So I can't wait.
Yay. All right, everybody, please go sit in a dark room and think about Carter not being able to play basketball, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Oh, and last thing for our listeners, I think we've got, after this week, we're going to have about one more Red Pyramid episode before we pivot to Wrath of the Triple Goddess. So just keep that in mind. Make sure you got Wrath of the Triple Goddess on pre-order. I actually have to go do my pre-order so I don't forget. And then we'll do a quick pivot and then we'll transition back to the Red Pyramid after that. So thank you, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.